Hey guys. All right. Hi, welcome to today's presentation, 2019 Sales Kickoff Tactics That Stick. I am your moderator for today, Jamie Bradley. I am on the marketing team at Ambition. We'll tell you all about Ambition here in a second. First, though, I want to say thank you to all you guys for being here. We have got a packed house, really pumped. And we'll get to some housekeeping here in a second. Then we'll do intros, and then we'll get right into the discussion. But yeah, I want to say hi to, we got people like Hello Sign, Salesforce, Glassdoor. So all the stars are out today, I guess, rather. So to kind of kick things off here, just to get started. So housekeeping, do not worry. We will send the recordings if you need to hop off or if you just want to share this with all your friends. We got you covered. You're also going to be muted, so you can type directly into the Q&A to ask questions. There's also a chat function. So if you do need to communicate with me, may not get to it immediately, but we will see it and we will answer your questions. Speaking of, we got a lot of really great ones during the registration process, so thank you for that. And you also have control over your display, so if at any point you want to move our faces around, our beautiful smiling faces, you can do that as well, so don't worry. So who are we? So I said, I'm Jamie, I'm from Ambition, but right out of the gate, one of my first guests, I got Mark Cosiclo. He is the VP of Sales at Outreach. Hey, Mark.
What up?
Welcome. Tell us a little bit more about why you're pumped to talk about SKOs today.
Listen, I think it's a very rare thing to get together a sales team, to get everybody course corrected, to march together up the hill, arm in arm, to take the battlefield for the next year. And I think that if you do it right, an SKO can be a galvanizing event that has months and months of awesome payback. If you do it wrong, I think it's just a waste of money and a waste of time, and actually can help, worsen your reputation as a sales leader. So I think it's really important.
That's awesome. Well, we're really pumped that you're here, and thank you for bringing some good folks to join the conversation with us today. Next up, we've got Chris Orlob. He is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Gong. Hey, Chris.
Hello. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell us, so Mark just teed it up really nicely, but what are you excited to talk about today?
Yeah, I think there's well, first of all, I'm just excited to talk about the entire topic of SKOs. So I'm thrilled for our SKO coming out in a couple months. But I think there are a few trends that are happening in the world that make SKO a little more critical than it used to be. And one of those is the expectations that salespeople have on their employers. So 10 years ago, you could hire a sales guy or a sales gal and just expected them to sell and make money, and they were kind of the lone wolf variety. But now when you hire salespeople, they want to be the best salespeople. They expect you to invest in them with coaching and training and resources and tools, and what they demand of you is greater, and an SKO is kind of like the nexus for providing them above and beyond what they won't get somewhere else.
Very well said. Well, we're so excited that you're here, and I'm excited to see what you have to say as we dig into the questions today. And last but certainly not least, we've got Mr. Jared Houghton. He is the Chief Sales Officer, one of the co-founders of Ambition. Like I mentioned, I work at Ambition too. So Jared, thank you for joining me on our.
Of course.
Webinar.
Thank you. Thank you for spearheading.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit more. What makes you excited to talk about today's topic?
I think what both these guys said is spot on. I mean, sales kickoff is, if you're building what I like to think about our sales team is like an NFL franchise, we're in it we're going to win the Super Bowl. So it's the time to, like Chris said, tap into your culture, tap into your team, but it is the best time of the year to rally the troops, to get everybody headed in the right direction and to go win a Super Bowl. And it starts by kicking off the year right and committing to that plan all year long.
Awesome. Well, I want my Super Bowl ring. So I
Deal.
feel like you just promised that to me. I'm very excited about this.
Absolutely.
So they just said it really well. They said why they're excited about it, just for, level setting, just in case there's anyone on the line today that is not a sales leader that might be lurking in our midst. What is a sales kickoff meeting? Basically, it's an annual meeting. It happens once a year, typically, usually in January, but we'll get into some different types later on. It's for the entire sales organization. It really just ensures that every single person is aligned. So that means your reps, your managers, your sales enablement, sales ops, everyone from top to bottom is on the same page around what the big goals are, the strategy, and just key initiatives for your business as a whole. It's also a really good time to reflect, to look back on wins that we had in the past year, and honestly talk about some challenges, maybe some things we didn't do so well in the previous months. But most importantly, it's to get everybody fired up. And I think I'm fired up about today's conversation, as well as what we have in store for SKOs. The other thing is that, none of this would come without a little bit of peril, a little bit of a warning. So the Sales Executive Council states that almost 87% of what your reps learn is likely to be forgotten at your SKO if you don't reinforce those learnings in some really smart ways and structure those meetings in the right ways. So that is really what our focus is going to be today, is how do we keep everyone excited, not only at that meeting or at that 1, 2, 3, however long it is, but how do we actually keep that going and make it effective, and make sure that we are hitting those long tail goals and our revenue numbers. So today we're going to cover what are the things you can do today to prep for that SKO, because even if it's in January or later in the year, there are some things that you can do after you leave today's call that are going to get you, ready to go. On-site tips for just structuring it. What do you actually do at the meeting? Not just, how do you get people pumped up or how do you prepare, but what's the actual day going to look like? Again, how do we reinforce those initiatives and those key learnings and define them? We're going to talk about real life examples of some things that worked really well for us, and maybe some foibles. I just wanted to say foibles. And then we're going to get to all of your questions as well. And again, we got some really great ones, but you can type questions in as we go. Don't be shy. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing here, make our faces all big and beautiful. And we're just going to hop right in. So right out of the gate, first question on our list is sort of beyond that. We talked about this a little bit, but what really is the point? What are the key accomplishments, or what's kind of that structure going to look like for the SKO? And Mark, I know in sort of preparing for this talk, we talked a little bit about that. So can you go into, what are you guys prepping for this year? But, what is sort of the, tips and tricks for defining where you have it, who attends, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I think, if we go back to Stephen Covey, you always begin with the end in mind. So you look at what you mainly want to accomplish. So at Outreach, what we mainly want to accomplish is we want to bring in our remote salespeople, make them feel part of the family, make sure that they feel valued and appreciated, and make sure that we create enough energy inside of them to help them, keep slogging along when they go back home and are sitting in their home office by themselves. And so I think when you kind of, really narrow it down to what you want to accomplish, I think that the structure and the talk tracks begin to materialize a lot better. I think what a lot of people do is they say like, well, what all do we need to get done? We better do the sensitivity training because HR needs us to do that. So we better do a session on that. Oh yeah, we're releasing this new product and we better talk about that. And those things might be well and good, but if they're not going to help you accomplish the purpose of spending all this money and taking all these people out of the field, then they shouldn't be part of the agenda.
Well, and to that end too, and this is for everyone, what are your views on where you should have it? Like, do you need to take everybody to Tahiti? Do you need to have it in a sexy location, or can it happen just on site, like where you are or at your HQ? What are your thoughts on that? And what have you seen work and not work?
Chris, go ahead.
I'm just going to riff off of where you should have the kickoff. So like if the end that you're trying to achieve is to revitalize your sales force after like a really hardworking year and maybe communicate direction for the coming year, then I think that whittles down your potential locations, and it's going to be different for everybody. But like here at Gong, for example, we're in San Francisco, we're doing ours in Napa. I know, not like super original, but the point is we're trying to communicate direction and we're trying to inspire our sales organization after a year of hard work. And our office is not really big enough to create an environment that's going to serve those two ends. So we wanted to get offsite, and we thought that getting offsite would facilitate those two ends, which is communicate direction and inspire. But everybody's got everybody's going to be a little bit different. I think the key to knowing where to do it is to take Mark's advice, which is start with the end in mind.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that. So we're a remote team too. I think Mark was saying that a lot of their folks are remote. I mean, the connections you build at an SKO, or really anytime you get your team together, are invaluable. So I think bring them together where you can. Tahiti would be awesome, but save that for once we win the Super Bowl, obviously. But save that for your President's Club or something. Make that for the people that really killed it last year, and that's a great thing. But I think get them together. It should be probably 2 days, probably not much more. And whether it's at Napa or at HQ or whatever, really, I think being in person is critical for having a successful SKO.
Yeah, and I actually have one more thing to piggyback off of that. If you think about the 3 companies that are at this webinar right now, or hosting the webinar, you've got Gong, Ambition, and Outreach. And Outreach and Ambition have remote sales organizations, and Gong does not. And so Gong, because everybody's in HQ, it doesn't really make sense for us to have our kickoff at HQ because everybody's already here, and that's like not what we're trying to achieve. But one of the things you want to try to achieve if you have a distributed sales organization like Outreach and Ambition does is achieve a sense of camaraderie and make sure everybody feels valued. And if that's what you're trying to achieve, now it makes more sense to do your SKO on site at HQ. And it just goes back to this idea where it's like, what end are you trying to achieve? Location is going to flow from that.
It's funny, as a lot of people know, my boss, Matt Millen, worked for Tony Robbins for 9 years. And so I have all these little Tonyisms, right? And one of the things is most SKOs are meant to change something. Change the goal, change the messaging, change the process, whatever it is. And there's 3 things that you have to do to change something. One, you have to change the story you tell yourself. So if I'm telling myself a story about my results, I have to change that story to change my results. The second one is you have to change your state, like your physical state. And for a lot of sales teams, getting out and going somewhere else changes the state, which puts you in a better state to change in general. And so I think doing it away from the office, away from the grime of the engineering team or the manufacturing team or whoever is sharing the office space with you, and getting out and changing the state makes people more open to changing what they're doing. So
that's great. And to that end, as we talk about structuring it, is there a sweet spot for length? I mean, I know we've talked a lot. I've seen them be 1 day offsite. Obviously, if you are taking a distributed team to Tahiti, the length of time that you're there, is there a sweet spot that you guys have found? Can you achieve everything that you need to achieve? And we'll unpack what you need to achieve as we go through. But do you think that really that can be achieved in 1 day, or does it really require 2 or 3?
I think I'll jump in and say, I think it depends on the company, on what you're changing. Is it drastic? Is it not? Mm-hmm. But I definitely have an opinion to this answer. And my opinion is 2 days is the right amount, especially if you're getting offsite to nap. I mean, you want to really tap into people getting together, but you both want to announce maybe day one, from a C-suite or a VP of sales or a founder, here's where we're going, and then build around that. But the next day would be more, sessions led by peers on how to do things. And also you're weighing in from marketing and sales. So I think you need 2 days, and I think you need kind of a 3-pronged approach at the sessions, from senior leadership to, maybe go-to-market leaders to the reps actually doing the job, teaching their peers. And I think all that can be done really well in 2 days with some lunches and some happy hours.
Yeah. Well, so we've got sort of our sweet spot. We're going to Napa for 2 days, and we're all getting together. So, as we, one sort of promise that we made at the top of the hour is that we really are going to talk about, what are the things that the people on the call need to be thinking about today to really prep for this. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of kickoffs are in January, but that's not always true. It's not always true for SaaS, I know. So what are the things that we need to do to prep so that we're ready, and how do we tee up what those goals and key initiatives are in an impactful way, right out of the gate?
I'm a big believer in the more choreographed and intentional the entire process is, the more credence the messages you want to deliver receive. And so, for example, like you need to start thinking, how are you getting people there? What is the rooming? What is the venue? And things like that. Like if it's a last minute scramble and the HR person says 2 days before, hey, don't forget to book your flights. And oh yeah, we're staying at the crappy smoky filled residence inn on the street. Like it just looks like it's all thrown together. And people really don't feel like, hey, this is something that's meant to be purposeful, where it's thoughtful, and they've actually taken more than 5 minutes to think about what they want to do. So creating that overall like professionalism and experience, I think is really good. And then secondly, I think it comes down to once you decide what your purpose is, you have to set that agenda really well. And I think that there's kind of 3 parts to the agenda. One is the social aspect. One is the teaching and learning aspect, and the other one is the celebratory and the interactive aspect. So like, you don't want every session to be like you're in college sitting in the lecture hall with all your, you know what I mean? As adults, as professionals, many people sitting, many of our reps are smarter than us. They have better ideas than us. And so creating that atmosphere of being intentionally inclusive in sessions, I think really helps out. So those are some things that we think about a lot here.
That's great.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on tapping into the experience and the culture of your company. I mean, like it should feel special. If it's a last minute thing that's, book your flights or be here tomorrow, and by the way, here's your homework, that's not going to be a great experience.
Yeah.
But one thing that we do that I've seen work really, really well, because it's one thing to, be talked at. Hey, we're going to do these things. Sorry, my screen's being taken over. We're going to do these things, and that's all we're going to do this year, and that's exciting. It's another thing to poll the team. What do you guys want to learn about? What should we be doing better? Where should we be putting a lot of focus? And then I think empowering the team to lead those sessions. Like they will do a much better job at talking about how to win competitive deals than someone who hasn't won a competitive deal in a long time. So empower the team, ask them what they want to learn, and build content and structure around something that is going to engage the sales team.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I wanted to zoom in on another word that Mark said a few minutes ago, which is choreograph. And he was talking about like the logistics of the actual event. And I think it's important to take that same choreographed discipline to the content itself. Especially the first day, I would go so far as to say your SKO should be structured similar to like an Apple product launch, especially like Apple back in the day in the Steve Jobs era.
Yeah.
And if you look at what they do on stage, like everything is so intentional. They introduce like some sort of like change every 10 minutes, whether it's like a new speaker or a demonstration, or he plays a video, and it keeps everybody engaged the entire time.
Yeah.
So I think treating your SKO content and just like the experience as if you were launching the most important product that your company has ever launched, I think that goes a really long way. And I also have a very interesting measure of success as to whether or not you've done that well, especially like on the first day. Yeah. And it's always the sentiment of the drink party at the end of the day. So it's like, if at the end of the day, when everybody's having their beer, wine, or whiskey or whatever, if they're having those drinks because they feel like they need a drink more than any other time they've needed one in their life because they've been just like talked at for the entire time, you failed, at least on your first day. But if the sentiment is everybody drinking and talking about how excited they are for the direction we're going in 2019 and all these great new changes that are being introduced, now you've achieved day one much more effectively. I
love that answer. And as a marketer with a theater background, I love choreography. So sort of shifting gears, use the word polling, Jared. So I'm going to poll the audience right now. So I'm going to launch this poll. As we talk about prepping, the question is, and you should see this here, in the coming year, which of the following are core initiatives for you and your sales team? And we'll answer some questions while you answer these. But the questions are individual team member growth and coaching, scaling productivity and automation, introducing new sales methodology, all of the above or none of the above. And if it's none of the above, what do you got? What's a huge core initiative for you? Oh man, this is so exciting. People are feeling it right now. All of the above is the front runner.
I can't vote.
Yeah, I was gonna say, are you seeing?
Sorry, guys. It's like we're
red
judging
X.
like a pie eating contest. You'll get your pie later. We'll talk. This whole thing's about you. This is about them. All right, we're gonna get to the minute mark. And some questions are coming in too. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and 3, 2, 1, end the poll. So our final answer, all of the above. That was overwhelming. 44% of and actually most of you answered this, said that growth coaching, productivity automation, and introducing a new sales methodology were all goals. So that's a tall order. And so that kind of, we talked about the structure. I love Chris's advice on just, you have done it. So if they're pumped when they're having their wine. So with that in mind, what is the best way, or what's the best advice on focusing that content? Who do you pull into that conversation? I mean, Jared mentioned, obviously, you want people that are actually actively selling to dictate some of it, but how much of a role do other teams in your organization play, like CS and marketing and in helping not just to, or HR, helping not just to shape it, but, or make sure people show up, but to actually make sure that everyone walks away with those kind of warm apple fuzzies at the end of the day. What does that look like, and how involved are those teams?
So I can start. I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve, both at the SKO and for the direction of the year coming. So I think trying to pull in heads of departments just for the sake of checking boxes and getting everybody their voice is a really bad idea. But if your goal is to get everybody fired up, and one of your means to achieving that end is you've got a new product being introduced like toward the end of Q1, now it makes sense to either pull the head of product marketing or product to sell the vision for that product. Mm-hmm. And the same thing applies to anything else that you're going to be introducing over the course of the year. If it's a new sales methodology, maybe you want the VP of sales, or even like some head of the sales training firm you hired to introduce like the high level of the new methodology. Mm-hmm. So I think the objectives you're trying to achieve both at SKO and for the year ahead will dictate who some of the quote unquote guest speakers are going to be throughout the agenda.
That's great. And we actually have a couple of questions coming in that are really relevant to build upon this. So Steve wants to know, do you guys just have, and not like written down, if you do, that's great, but it's like a sample SKO agenda. So if we have our dream 2 days in Tahiti, and obviously it ends with everyone is pumped, wearing a black turtleneck, drinking their spiked LaCroix. How did we get there on day one? And, what is the mix of content? And another question Anthony asked was, what are some exercises that aren't corny? What are some ways that we can engage? And or I would say, if it is corny so bad? Yes, that was a lot of stuff, but yeah, agenda. How do we build that camaraderie?
I can take this one, Jamie. I'll happily provide you a PDF copy of our last sales kickoff agenda that you can provide with the recording.
Yay! Thank you.
That's awesome.
And I have the best team building exercise known to man that is absolutely not corny. All right, it's kind of weird, but what you do is you have everybody get together. They turn to one person, and so you're teamed up one-on-one, and you do rock, paper, scissors, shoot, right? Then whoever wins gets behind the person that won and puts their arms on their shoulders. So, you kind of back to back, and you walk into those people, pair up and find somebody else, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. But the person behind has to cheer for the person that's winning. So what happens is as you, like I've done this in a room of 1,000 people, it's unbelievably awesome, right? So you get like you'll keep developing your line of people as you win. And at the end, it's 2 people squaring off with the whole rest of the room behind them in teams. rock, paper, scissors, and they're all cheering on the person that is at the front of their line. So that is an awesome team building thing because you're all rooting together, all talking together. That I learned at a company that's really, really fun.
I've actually been a part of one of those before, and it actually is a ton of fun, and everybody weirdly rallies really quickly. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got another one. I don't think it's quite as intense or cool as what Mark just described.
Okay.
One of the things we do, which I think one of our employees stole from like their previous employer. So we didn't invent this, but on the last day as kind of like a way to put the cherry on top of the cake, we will go to a golf course and we'll play golf, but every hole you have to have a new like type of club for hitting the ball. So it could be a baseball bat on one hole. It could be a golf club on one hole. It could be like a variety of different types of things that you're going to hit the golf ball with. So it kind of like levels the playing field because there's always like some superstar golfers and some people who have never golfed in their life and they just suck at it, which I fall into that category. I have golfed like once or twice in my life, but I'm not good at it. And we've noticed it just that sort of game where it like eliminates the status of good golfer, average golfer, poor golfer. I've liked the impact it's made on our team.
That's awesome. I love that. And I would be your bad golfer. So a question that I really like that's come in is, what are some, we've talked about some really great things. We've talked about some great non-cheesy games. We've talked about format, who should be there. We're going to get a template for some content, but I feel like I learn from mistakes. What are some things that you've seen or participated in or orchestrated that maybe just didn't work so well? And what have you seen that kind of leaves people with that deflated feeling other than just being talked at all day?
Yeah, I was really going to go with the talked at all day. So let me think another minute. I mean, the worst thing you could do, we'll just go deeper on the talk at, is just get up there and talk about a PowerPoint. Here's what we're doing, talking slowly. Like people will tune out immediately. And they're not, I mean, that's the 87% number, right? That's what people are not engaging with. So don't talk out them, don't run PowerPoints, and whenever you can, make it engaging. I love role playing. So we will have someone lead an example. For example, we know the person on the team who's great at winning competitive deals. Mm-hmm. No one knows it better than him or her. Inspire that person to do it and then turn it into a working session afterwards, and how they can apply the things that were taught in that to actually, win competitive deals in a mock demo, for example.
Yeah. And speaking of interactive, I see Mark hopping into the questions, which is...
He's a multitasker.
Boom.
How do you do it? No, this is very helpful. Thank you. But the question was from Dawn, that's asking, a lot of these ideas so far, we've talked about distributed teams, taking teams, but people that have actually pretty small teams, what are some good ideas? And so Mark, if you wanted to kind of touch on the advice you just gave Dawn, so that everyone can see it, because I thought it was really great.
Yeah, there's a couple small team questions in there. So first of all, if you have 3 people, is it important to do in person? You should be doing a quarterly meeting with 3 people or 4 people on. You should be bringing people together every quarter somewhere. When outreach was very young, what we would do is we'd bring everybody into Seattle, and then we would assign the salespeople somebody to stay with while they were in Seattle. So they got to know other people in the company because they stayed with them at their houses and ate with their wives and kids. And it just really like bonded us together in that really hard time when we were trying to get to $10 million, right? So it's even more important when you have 3. And then some cool stuff you can do. We just had all of our AEs in for something called Sales Week. It wasn't really an SKO, but it was everybody took them and did cliche, but it was super fun. And, as a sales leader, you can kind of sit back and watch to see who took the lead. And that was really cool. We've taken people to Top Golf, Mini Golf. We have an awesome adult arcade / bowling alley place in Seattle that we take people to and have some drinks. But if you have 3 or 4 people, you can't do some of the bigger team building stuff, but you can do more intimate things together. And I found most salespeople are competitive, so doing some kind of semi-competitive thing usually it gets everybody's juices flowing. So those are some things that we've done. Going back, Jamie, just real quickly about mistakes too, is the number one mistake you make at SKO is thinking what your people need to hear and being off. So if you put together a whole agenda and everybody gets here and goes, what the heck are we doing talking about this crap? Like it's over, like just send them home, right? So we do something where we poll every AE and all the people coming in that are going to be a part of it. We say, what is most important to you? And then we make the number one and number two things the two biggest parts of the week so that they feel heard and so they feel supported. And so that's a huge thing that you can do, is just ask people what they want. Even if it doesn't fit into your agenda, do it 100%. You can't ask and then not do. So do it, and people will feel heard and like they had some impact on the agenda. We usually kick right off the very first thing with what they've asked for to show like we're listening. And I think that's a huge mistake that you can make, is not listening and not asking and just assuming. And if you get it wrong, you're really in trouble.
I love that.
I think another mistake that people are highly likely to make is overtraining. So I actually, and this goes against, I think, popular opinion, I don't see SKOs as like a training event. I think some level of training does need to happen, but I think too many organizations overtrain, like especially if they're rolling out a new sales methodology. If you go back to what you're trying and think about what you're trying to achieve, and for us, it's communicate direction and re-inspire the sales organization. If we happen to be rolling out a new sales methodology, we're going to present that at SKO in the frame of helping our sales reps get excited about this new methodology, rather than like beating them to death about every in and out and tactic and strategy that makes up that methodology. Because frankly, like 2 or 3 days is not enough to absorb an entire new methodology. So I do think there needs to be like some light training that happens throughout SKO. But treating it as like an in-depth, like boot camp style training event and expecting your reps to come out the other end of that as like masters of solution selling or medic or challenger sale, I think that's a big mistake.
What? You can't teach people something in 1 2-hour session that's like somebody talking at them the whole time and then they digest it and change the way they sell the very next day?
We're not all supermen.
Oh my God.
That's a Mark thing.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Mark.
Mark.
I wish I could do that. I'd be making a lot more money than I am right now if I could do that.
Well, that was really great. And that leads me into a question that, you know, I think draws back to sort of the point of this, which is, you know, how do we get this to stick? How do we make this investment that we are, you know, literally, I mean, monetarily, sort of time investment, we're making people stop what they're doing, we're taking them out of the field. How do we, you know, you said for a small team, you can easily, you know, fly them in, you know, there's 3 people, it's easy, but how do you know, we have a lot of people on the call, like for instance, we have Salesforce, we have people with gigantic sales organizations. How do you keep and reinforce the learnings from these meetings going all year long? You know, is that mini meetings? Is it, you know, do you pair people up in small teams that they stay with throughout the year? What are some ways that you've seen this work?
I'll speak to maybe kind of what we do. I mean, business kind of does this quarter over quarter. It's always a bang more in Q3 and Q4. So the missions of the quarter are usually themed. It's like, we need to do these things really, really well. And there's like battles up to a bigger war, if you think about the year of the championship, if you take the sports analogy. So we run like sales sprints weekly, where it's every Monday we reinforce exactly what the plan was. The plan's not changed. We're still working on it. Commit to goals that everybody can be accountable to. Departments do coaching one-on-ones throughout that same voice all year long, every week. Friday recaps, where do we win, where do we lose? Let's give some shout outs. And then we do monthly recaps, quarterly's bigger, and then we start a new battle, Q2, with the same vision the entire time that was told as sales kickoff. So that's kind of our frequency. We say the same thing all the time. We do it daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly. That's what we've had some success with, but love to hear what you guys think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things is similar to what I said a couple of minutes ago is, here's what not to do. Okay, so here's what to do is to treat the SKO as an introduction of what you're going to do, but not as the thing itself. Like, treat the reinforcement as like a separate event that's going to happen throughout the year, rather than like, the wrong question to ask is, how do we reinforce what we taught during SKO? Because you should have been pretty high level at the SKO, at least in my opinion. You should have introduced it in a way that got them all fired up, but the real down and dirty training and then ongoing reinforcement is going to happen after SKO, because there's a time and place for that. Getting into the details of how to actually do that, I love what Jared just said, which is like, treat these initiatives as weekly sprints. You know, if you've got something for 2019, that's a long time. You know, if you do your SKO in February, you've got 11 months ahead of you.
Right.
Chunk it down into weekly sprints and put it into like miniature goals that you can measure against from the previous week. I think that's great.
What we've done is we use a tool called Mind Tickle, and what we can do is we have an unbelievable director of field readiness named Jerry Farr. Jerry looks at the agenda. First of all, he does the agenda, which is way harder than you think it is. And then he does all the agenda. He gets all the, works with our EA, Sasha and Keely, who do an amazing job of getting it all organized. But then Jerry looks at it and he says, okay, what is going to require ongoing education? And then he creates an ongoing education plan for those issues. And if it requires certification, he creates a certification event. So listen, if you're going to change up how you demo, you might need to do 3 or 4 chunks after SKO of people doing great demos, and then maybe you upload a couple for your manager to listen to, and then you schedule your certification event to say, yes, I can actually demo, and now I'm certified to do that. I think that ongoing education plan is really important from an enablement function. Otherwise, that slide that you put up at the beginning, Jamie, becomes true, and they just lose 80%, 87% of what they do. And I guarantee you, the 13% that they retain, the 13% you don't even care about.
Yeah.
Sure. No, that's a great point. And to that end, I'm going to combine some questions. We have one that came in before we started, and then a question from Paul. You guys have talked about, sort of the structure of the event a little bit. And I love Chris's point of, you want to make sure this is kind of just it's literally the kickoff. It's the pep rally. It's here's what we're going to learn, but it's not, here's everything that you need to learn in 2 days. But what is that mix of reflecting on 2018? And Paul's question specifically, if there were losses, if there were things that you want to correct and course correct, what role does that play in the SKO? Does it play a role? Is it more about positivity? Obviously, I, again, love everyone being, the Apple release at the hotel bar or wherever they are at the end of the night. So, how much time do you devote to sort of the reality of where we've been and not just where we're headed?
I think you I'll jump in there really quickly, but I think you kind of have to start there. I mean, you either won the Super Bowl last year and you're cheersing and everybody's celebrating, but even if you did, you still can get better. Great coaches, great teams want to get better. But if you were a losing season, as the leader in the kickoff, I think you still acknowledge that. I mean, you say like, hey, we didn't win on these things, and that's going to maintain a part of our strategy in the new year. But I think acknowledgement and celebrating the wins, whether there were losses as well, but acknowledgement's huge from leadership. And showing your commitment to fixing those things and or shifting the strategy or process for 19 really needs to be the big focus. So definitely acknowledge it, good and bad, and then shift that into how that is going to change at this year's 19 SKO. The SKO's purpose is to sell more stuff. So how are you going to take what you learned last year, good or bad, and make it easier for the team to sell more stuff this year?
Yeah, I think it is important to keep pretty much the entire atmosphere of an SKO positive. Mm-hmm. That's not to say you can't reflect on what you lost. I think if you're going to do that, you need to frame it in terms of, and here's what I learned, and here's what we've changed, and here's the good results that we've either achieved as a result of that learning or will achieve as a result of the plan we're implementing to correct it. When I worked at InsideSales.com, we actually had a customer come up on stage who had a really messy implementation and was oversold, and it was just kind of a mess at the time. But eventually, like I don't even know the full story, but the customer success manager and implementation manager kind of pressed the reset button 6 months in and really saved that account. And so that is the story that customer told. So it kind of like started as like, here's like a huge mistake we made. Here's why we made it. And here's what we did to correct the situation. And by the way, here's how we're going to prevent this from ever happening again. And I think at first when that customer got on stage, everybody was kind of like, why are we talking about this? Mm-hmm. But at the end of the presentation, there was such a high note that it got everybody fired up.
Yeah. And that actually leads really well into a question that just came in from Daria, who wants to know, have you invited any outside speakers or coaches to an SKO, and did it work well? So I love the example of learning from an actual customer and hearing it come from them. Again, to love the example of polling your staff, polling your team and asking them, what do they want? But, what are your views on, especially, I guess, if you're probably launching or trying to, teach someone a new methodology that has a famous kind of, person attached to it. What are your thoughts on that, and how much of a role does that play, or should it be all in the family?
I really believe in outside resources. We bring in an outside resource to MC the event for us, which takes a lot of mental load off of people that need to be more engaged with other stuff during the event. We bring in customers as well. That's a really great one, especially if you provide a little Q&A afterwards where people can really ask the questions that they're interested in. And, you got to prepare those customers so they're ready for the interrogation they're going to get. We also bring in typically like a motivational type of person. So, last year we brought in one of our investors who talked about why he thought our company had such a big future and why it was the best company in their portfolio and stuff like that. And that just helped people rally around that kind of an idea and the company in general. And then the last thing that we've done a couple times, but not every time, is we brought in, like you said, like we worked with a company called Force Management to really help with our messaging. And so we actually brought those guys in to do the basic foundational training of Force Management. And it just adds a lot of credence and legitimacy because they've trained, X, Y, and Z company. It's not just Mark and Matt coming up with stuff, or reading some book and like, look at what we cobbled together. That's going to be so awesome, to have them come in and say, like, these are the effects that we've had with even some of your customers and why they're so awesome. It just really helps because if it's just you, it gets to be inbred. And we're always talking to our people all the time. Mm-hmm. If you don't bring in some outside voices, you get a lot of noise and not much signal.
Yeah, the novelty of bringing in external speakers also keeps everybody engaged. Everybody in the company has probably heard your leadership speak on like a monthly basis or quarterly basis, but when they get to hear some like famous sales trainer or investor that sits on your board or high profile customer come in, it kind of perks up the brain. It's like this neuroscience thing where, a new change forces people to pay attention.
I couldn't agree with, I have nothing to add. All of those things are right. Definitely bring customers. I mean, there's professional keynote speakers for a reason. They're good at getting people really fired up. And ultimately that's the goal. Get people really excited. And a lot of times, and like Chris said, they've heard the same message from you already. And it's kind of crazy. People will hear things differently from when different people say them. So tap into that and bring in, whether it's a trainer, a keynote speaker, or customers, or all of the above, depending on your size. Let other people help at the sales kickoff.
Well, and then I have a question, just selfishly. So how much should you budget for something like this? If you think of your entire, and you don't have to tell me exact numbers, but just proportionately this, you're talking about bringing in other speakers, possibly hiring keynotes, that sort of thing. Do you think the importance of that, like how would you scale that for different sized organizations? Obviously, if you're huge, you can afford to bring in, the big flashy speaker, but what does that look like for the every team?
Ask your finance person, then tell them you need double, and you'll land at 50% more than they were going to give you, and that's what you got to spend.
I love it.
That's a great example.
we'll make sure our guys.
Is Matt going to help us get Tony for the ambition kickoff this year? Is he still
We did it. Speaking back of group events, actually something that we took from Tony is, a big part of Tony's event is this fire walking thing where you actually walk across fire. Matt sent me, it was an amazing experience, and I went in a little bit skeptical, left like, this dude is one of the best public speakers and has great ideas and just really opened your mind, really awesome. But one thing that we did as a company is we took these boards and we wrote on one side, what are the things that hold you back? And then on the other side, we write, what are the things that you want in this new year, in this new sales year? And then the entire company would get together with these boards that they've created. And then, the executives stand at the front and they hold the boards, and they've taught us how to hold the boards correctly. And then they train people on how to break the boards with their hands, like karate style. And I can't tell you what an emotional, psychological event it is for somebody to write on a board the things that hold them back and to get honest with it. And then to hold that up and then to break through that, like it's this physical manifestation of this thing that you want to happen in your life. And like the first year that we did it, we have little girls that are, 90 pounds. We have me that's 92 pounds. We have like big old strong, muscle bound guys that are 250, like, press 13 of me. But but everybody broke the board except for one girl the first year. And the entire company got around that one girl and rooted with her. And she had to use her foot to break the board. But I'm telling you, it is one of the, like if the book of outreach gets written, that will be one of the stories that's in there. It was a galvanizing moment where people felt like we have everybody's back here. We're all in this together. And if somebody struggles, we're going to root for you through the struggle so that you succeed. But like, that's a great example of stuff you can do. And outside speakers can bring that kind of stuff
energy.
Yeah, they can bring that kind of idea that you're just never going to come up with on your own.
Well, to that end, galvanizing was the word of the day. You started there, you ended there. I think that is amazing. Just a great anecdote, and thank you for sharing that. So we're out of time. And I'm going to put up this slide here, but are there any final thoughts that you guys have as we head out today? So what do you want to leave our sales leaders with for their SKOs?
This is what I want to leave everybody with. If you're planning your SKO and you haven't purchased Gong, Ambition, or Outreach yet, that's the first thing you should do.
There's a lot of initiatives out there, and usually they need good technology to go alongside them. So echoing Mark, but I would say parting words, be really intentional, whether you're that 3 or 4 person team or you're a team of 2,000 and you're a field sales team that needs to go inside, whatever it is, it could be a major transformation. Be very intentional with your planning, with your polling the team, with your bringing in a speaker, whatever it is. Sales kickoff literally sets the pace for the entire year. So don't mess it up, make it great and make sure everyone leaves there. Kind of like Chris's test earlier with like, what do they feel like at the drinks happy at the end? Are they ready to run through a wall for the company and feel like everything that you're talking about is possible and that they're going to hit number and they're going to do it easily and have the most pipeline in the world? So get them fired up and be really intentional about your speakers and your planning and your sessions and everything. That'd be my parting words.
Write your reps a unique handwritten note. If you're like a frontline manager, thank them for a specific thing they did over the previous year, and then write non-generic expectations you have of them for the coming year.
I love that. All right. Well, my final
Mark,
word.
I know
Mark,
Mark
you got something else.
Words.
I know Mark has to get the last word in, doesn't he?
I would say that the effort that you put in is the effort that you out. And if you're going to spend all this money and take all of this productivity out of the field, like take a month and set aside an hour every other day and really put in the time and effort to get it right. Don't plan it in the last two weeks. Don't like be jostling with the agenda 2 hours beforehand. Like, have thought through it. I think if you put into it a lot, you'll get out of it a lot.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, our esteemed panel. We're already getting people writing and saying that this was a good conversation, and you guys made it good. Your questions were excellent and really helped shape the conversation, and I hope it was helpful. And we will send the recording, so don't worry. You can share it around with everyone, and yeah, go out and sell some stuff.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.